Hi. Sorry. I apologize. Because the previous briefings have run over quite a bit, there's not a lot of time for this particular briefing, but we are very pleased to have with us Joan Donoghue, the president of the International Court of Justice, and Philippe Gautier, the registrar. They only have a handful of minutes, so please, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you to all of you. We're here because it's International Law Week, for us an important week, and during International Law Week, the President of the International Court of Justice addresses the General Assembly, the Security Council in private session, and the Sixth Committee of the General Assembly, which is the Legal Committee. As was noted, we are behind schedule at this point ourselves because we have to be at another event a few blocks away, so we only have about 5 minutes. So I think if we could make some general remarks, or we could take a few questions if you have any. We're really in your hands.
Well, are there any? Please, go right ahead.
Hi, Amélie Botelier from AFP News Agency. A number of states, led by Vanuatu, are working on a General Assembly resolution to ask for an advisory opinion from the court about climate. Could you tell us if this is adopted, what would be the process, what could be the outcome, what could that change in the way the court is dealing with climate issues? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question. We only learned a little bit of the specifics about what's intended by Vanuatu when we heard the statement that Vanuatu presented at the General Assembly yesterday. So, of course, we don't know what the question or questions will be. But we anticipated that there might be interest in this, and actually the registrar could just give you a brief overview of what happens at the court when a request for advisory opinion comes to us. So the part that happens in the General Assembly is in the hands of the General Assembly, but once it comes to us, the registrar could perhaps indicate what happens within the court. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Yes, besides the contentious jurisdiction, as the court may deal with disputes between states, there is a possibility for international organizations and the UN to pose a question, a legal question to the court. And as the President mentioned, all depends on the wording of those questions, which will be addressed to the court. But there is a possibility, for example, to address a question by the General Assembly of the UN or the Security Council or the Economic and Social Council also. And that happened in the past. When there is such a question, the Secretary General, if there is a resolution which is adopted by the General Assembly asking some legal questions, the Secretary General will write to the court to transmit the questions. After that, the court will examine, but the first task will be for the registrar to send a copy of those questions to all member states, because there is a possibility for every member state of the UN to present its view on the questions which are submitted to the court. And there is a written phase. There is also the possibility to react vis-à-vis some statements already made by other states. And not only member states, but the court will identify, if need be, intergovernmental organizations, which could be requested by the court to give their opinion. That could be UNCCC, the Convention on Climate Change, for example, in the case you referred to. That's the written phase. After that, there would be, normally, if it's decided by the court, a hearing. And during the hearing, there would be a possibility for representatives of member states to express their views. If you look at past practice, that could be that the number of states which intervene, that ranges from 10 to 35 plus. It depends on the interest. NGOs cannot participate in the procedure, but there is a practice direction of the court. The documents they could file, it's not part of the case file, stricto sensu, but that's something which is dealt with like material publicly available, and it's placed in a room in the Peace Palace in The Hague. The General Assembly, when submitting this question, could indicate also whether there is urgency. There is a possibility for the General Assembly to qualify the question or the procedure, and if it's urgent, of course, it will be for the court to take action to deal swiftly. Not that the court is not dealing swiftly with questions submitted to it, but that would be super urgent, I would say. I would add to conclude that the court is not settling a dispute when it is dealing with a request for an advisory opinion. It's to clarify points of law. It can be connected to an existing problem issue, but it's not to settle a dispute between states. But it's not a binding value, the legal opinion which is given, but it has certainly an authoritative value, and it is referred to later in a number of other decisions. But that's just in a nutshell, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Gautier. So when we're finished, what we are doing is we're delivering an opinion which is intended to be of use to the organ that asked for it. So in this case, what's anticipated is that the General Assembly would be asking us for an advisory opinion, and we would render advice in response to that.
Yes, Alan.
Thank you very much, Alan Bulcati from RIA Novosti News Agency. Thank you for doing this briefing. I have a question regarding the situation around Ukraine. I'd like to refer to the two conventions, Hague Conventions of 1907, stipulating the rights and duties of neutral powers in case of war on land and on sea. So the first convention, which is saying about the land conflict, the chapter 1 of this convention, Article 4 says, I quote, "Corps of combatants cannot be formed, nor recruiting agencies opened on the territory of a neutral power to assist the belligerents." And if I refer to the second convention, the Article 6 of it stipulates that the supply in any manner, directly or indirectly by a neutral power to a belligerent power, of warships, ammunition, of war materials, of any kind, whatever, is forbidden, end quote. My question is, do these conventions allow us to conclude that the countries which are actively supporting Ukraine now by munitions, by arms, by training their forces on their territories, are no longer considered as neutral states, but they are parties of the conflict? Do you have any opinion on this? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So as a court, we don't opine on legal questions of general interest that are not presented to us in cases. Those are the kinds of questions that might be addressed by scholars, by states that are interested, et cetera. But we are not in a position as a court to address questions that might be relevant to the broader conflict which you mentioned, but that are not before us. So I'm sorry, we can't give an answer to that. I think, with apologies, I think we need to run to our next event.
Yes.
And I apologize. First of all, I'm grateful to those of you who stayed and showed interest in the court. We care deeply about sharing information about our court, and we are very busy right now, and appreciated the level of interest here at UN headquarters this week. But we had another event scheduled back-to-back with this one, so we need to head off to that now. Thank you very much, and sorry to have to rush
Thanks
off.
very much, and I apologize for taking up your time. Have a great time, and I hope you make your next appointment. Thanks. All right.